only been in town here for 4.5 months. And as a result of that, I have never done a reading, so that nobody here in town knows what I can do or cannot do. About 20 years ago, I started writing a memoir. Before that, I had written quite a bit of fiction, and the memoir was a different kind of exercise altogether, because you can't make up what happened to you. You have to remember what happened to you. And after I finished the memoir 13 years later, let me just say parenthetically that the problem with writing the memoir was that I had to be honest with myself. I couldn't make it up. And so after I finished the memoir 13 years later, I began giving workshops. At that time I was living in Ottawa, and I gave workshops at Carleton University and to a number of smaller groups. And what I discovered in all the time I was working with memoir was that we all tell ourselves stories. We are all victims of our own stories. This is a psychological truth, unfortunately. We all tell ourselves stories about ourselves, and it's interesting that there are masks over there, because one of the things that I find about the stories that we tell is that we all hide behind masks. The person you see in front of you is not the person who sits at home with my wife. I am not a public speaker at home. I'm a totally different person. And I might tell you that I'm very happy with the persona that's standing in front of you. I'm happy with that person. One of the things I'm going to call your attention to in the story I'm going to read is that it's about a real person. But that person is so disguised that neither he nor his family would recognize him. Although all of his other grandchildren, I'm one of his grandchildren, all of his other grandchildren did recognize him when I read the story to them. It's about my grandfather, who was a Ukrainian immigrant. But I place the story in the southern United States, and I make him a cracker. I give him a very strong southern accent, and I give the narrator a very strong southern accent, and I hope you're up to it. I call this story Old Vinegar. Old Vinegar is the old man who is the center of the story. I was at the house with Ma when Gran took her last breath. Didn't take 2 minutes, and there was Ma starting in on that nasty tune of hers. Tears a streaming down her face, her eyes getting red, and her words blaming Gramps for killing the woman. "It's Old Vinegar killed her," she said. "Selfish bugger, him and his demands." I tried to calm her down. "Ma," I said, "hold your bile, it's over. No point blaming. Anyway, Gran's at peace now." "You know I'm right," she answered. "Just mind the last time we saw 'em both. It was always like that. Him a-spitting and a-puffing on them hoity-toity French cigarettes, stinking up the house, waiting on Gran to bring his grub. And when it came, him like as not to bring his fist down on the table, like she had ruined his day again. The table would have broken if he hadn't built it so strong himself." She stared into space. "And that bottle of mash he always carried. And then the yelling. Why, even outside, people would stop in their tracks and wonder what in tarnation is going on in that house. And when poor Gran asked what the problem was, he'd more like as not say, 'There was too much salt in the soup.' 'Woman, you fixing for a divorce?' Christ almighty," she sobbed. "How'll they ever last 62 years together? She was a blessing Old Vinegar never deserved. If he thinks I'm going to pick up where Gran left off, he's got another think of coming." So, when the old man took a stroke and ended up in the hospital over at Opelika, Ma never went to see him. "You can go if you want," she told me, "but the old fart's finally getting what's coming to him, and he ain't going to see me there." I used to go every day to see the man who taught me half of what I knew about life. Things like how to write a check and how to make wine. And chess. We used to sit half an afternoon playing. He could see what I was going to do before I even knew it myself. I'd reach for a bishop and he'd say, you do that and you're going to be in the toilet." And he'd stroke my cheek, and show me how my night was a better move. Seeing him lying there, all spooky still, was hard those first few times. I nearly thought he was dead. They said he'd never walk again, and I wondered if he'd ever talk again either, or even move. Every time I went, I had to wait for the doctors to tell me it was okay to go, that he'd be alive when I came back. One day when I showed up, I could hardly believe what I saw. His eyes were burning a hole through one of them exercise bars they had set up over him, and he didn't see me in the doorway. I could scarce believe him at 90, chinning himself. I don't think I could have done it myself. He had his fingers all wrapped around tight, and he was pulling and tugging and straining, get his head up off the pillow, but then it'd drop back and he'd start again. By and by, he managed to pull his head up almost to his fingers, his face getting redder and redder all the time. His mouth opened wide, like he wanted to grip that bar with his teeth. Jesus, I thought, I'm glad I'm not that bar. The old man's coming back to life. But he gasped, choked again, let go of the bar. His head dropped back to the pillow and he just lay there. I couldn't tell if he was breathing or not, and I rushed over. It seemed an eternity before he opened one eye and saw me standing there. He pushed some air out his lips, and that eye got rounder and rounder. He took my hand and gave a gentle squeeze the way he used to when I was a child. It took all his strength to push out one word. I could tell he still had plenty of life in him when he looked straight at me and he said,